Hi, welcome to another segment with Alex. My name is Sarah Salato, and I'm here with Tony Ferriolo from Healthcare Advocates International, and Stacy Mayer, who is a mother of a transgender child. And we're here with some LGBTQ facts for you. We asked Tony to join us and maybe put together a slideshow of some things that he felt would be interesting and needed for the community as a whole to learn more about the LGBTQ community itself. We're going to be talking about proper use of pronouns. We're going to be talking about proper use of names. We're going to be talking about, we're also going to be talking about gender identity, what it means to individuals, what it means to you, and we're really just hoping that you're going to feel much more educated after this segment. And if you have any questions, you can find me on Alex, and you can also go to Healthcare Advocates International. So, that being said, let's move on.
Yeah. So thanks for having me. I'm super excited about this. This is really a one-on-one type of slideshow because I think that's a really good place to start. I don't want to overwhelm people with all this other terminology and stuff like that. So we're going to start by going over the genderbread person. I'm not sure if any of you have ever seen this before. Super cool tool to really tell the differences between gender identity, gender expression, and a bunch of other things. If you take anything away from this slide, I would ask you to take away that nothing is connected, and I'll give you some examples along the way. Here we go. Put your seatbelts on. Okay. So your gender identity is your sense of yourself. So it lives in your brain. It's your sense of being male, female, something else, both or neither. Something else, both or neither. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on. It is totally separate from your gender expression. Your gender expression is your outward appearance. It's how, your clothing, your haircuts, how you present yourself. I'm trying to present myself male today. I hope I'm pulling it off. Okay?
Kind of.
Kind of. Thank you. Totally separate from your anatomical sex. Hormones, chromosomes, genitalia. We're going to talk about genitalia because we need to talk about it. As a transgender man myself, I've probably been asked about my genitalia more than you've been asked, hey, how's your day going? Okay? It's just the way it is. It's inappropriate to ask me that question. When someone is born, someone looks at their body and they guess what their gender identity is going to be. And then when that baby gets old enough, they tell the adults if they guessed right or not. Okay? Genitalia is not connected to your gender identity. Here's another great example. If you were born with the sex assigned at birth as male, and you identify as male, and just say, you were in a car accident or had cancer and they had to remove your penis, it happens. Would you wake up from that procedure feeling like a woman? Would you wake up from that procedure having no gender identity? Of course not. You would wake up from that procedure feeling like male, just like you did before the procedure started. This is why we can't say, because you don't have that, you're not that. All right? Something else I like to just go over very quickly is sexual attraction versus romantic attraction, two different things. Okay? There are people in this world that identify as asexual, which means they're not sexually attracted to anyone, but they can certainly be in a romantic relationship with someone. You also have people who are sexually attracted to more than one gender, but can only see themselves in a romantic relationship with one or the other. What's super cool about this slide is that everyone in the studio and everyone watching is a variation of every single thing on this slide. And what I think is super cool, and by the way, if you want to be in my personal bubble, fun place to be, right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Fun place to be.
Absolutely.
This stuff doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that you're kind and you're a compassionate person. All right, so the next thing I like to talk about is some terminology. All right, let's talk about cisgender, because a lot of people who are cisgender have no clue they're cisgender. So I thought we'd let you know, all right? So a cisgender person is someone whose sex, gender identity, and gender expression matches the one assigned to them at birth, regardless of their sexual orientation. So if you were born with the birth assigned sex as male and you identify as male, you're cisgender. Same thing if you were born with the assigned birth sex of female and you identify as female, you are cisgender. Okay? Transgender. Now, a transgender person is someone who has a different sex, gender identity, and or gender expression than the one assigned to them at birth, regardless of their sexual orientation. All right? I'll give you a good example. I will use myself as an example. Prior to transitioning, I identified as a lesbian. Now, it's a misconception that all trans guys were lesbians first, so get that out of your head because that's not true. But for me, that was my truth. After I transitioned, I'm still attracted to females. That didn't change, okay? So the sexual orientation, my sexual orientation now, instead of being gay, now I'm straight, right? Mind blown. Okay,
Yeah.
let's talk about some misconceptions. I think it's important. Transgender people struggle with mental illness. Absolutely, some of us do. Just like people in any community struggle with mental illness. I was at a conference and this trans woman said this, and I say it every time I train because it was so powerful. She says, being trans doesn't mean you're crazy. Being trans can make you crazy. The hardest part of my work for the past 18 years has been sitting in psych units with children who don't want to live anymore, who are self-harming to a point that there's no room on their bodies for another slash. Why are they there? They're not there because they're trans. They're there because everybody around them is telling them they're not. All right, so let's think about that. Surgery is top priority for all transgender people. Absolutely not true. Your gender identity lives in your brain, and for some people, that's good enough. They don't need any surgeries or anything like that. For me, I needed surgeries to survive. And it's not want. Medical affirming care is a need, and it's life-saving, and it's medically necessary. Every single medical association in the United States are telling us these surgeries, and not surgeries, but this medical care for kids is needed. Puberty blockers, it's necessary if that child needs it. All right, so we have to start putting aside everything we've heard about puberty blockers and how they're going to harm trans kids. So a lot of people don't know is that puberty blockers have been used on cisgender children since 1997. They didn't invent this puberty blocker for trans kids, right? If a trans child is on a puberty blocker, this is important to know. And during that course of puberty blocking and before we start cross hormones, if that child says, I'm not who I thought I was, but by the way, it has never happened in any situation that I've been in, but just say that happens, and we remove that blocker, the body goes right back to where it's supposed to be. There's no harm. There's no harm. The emotional harm, if you don't put a child on a blocker and they go through an unwanted puberty, is horrifying. Those are the kids that are cutting. Those are the kids that are attempting suicide. And by the way, those are the kids who have committed suicide. So it's super important.
Can I interrupt for a
Yes.
second on that?
Yes.
Also, regarding misconceptions, I've realized that people don't really know what that medical transition, medical intervention means for children.
Yeah.
And they think that it's starting at a very, very early age. The only thing that's started at a very early age, if a child identifies as transgender, is a social transition.
Social transition.
And that social transition is just change of clothes, haircut
Name,
maybe, name,
pronoun.
pronoun. It's nothing medical at all.
Yeah.
The very first thing that can happen if this child and the family agrees and the doctor agrees is the puberty blockers.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be until they're 10, 11 years old.
Right.
depending
They start the puberty blocker right before Tanner stage 2 starts. So right when the breast buds are developing, that's when they block the puberty.
Right. And
Yeah.
speaking of the puberty blockers, my oldest son was going through what they thought might have been precocious puberty.
Yeah.
So when he was 7 or 8 years old, they were concerned that he was already starting puberty. So they were going to, if needed, put him on puberty blockers.
And that would be fine.
That's not my transgender son. That
Yeah.
was my
Yeah,
cisgender
yeah,
son.
yeah.
And that would be totally fine.
Yeah.
But it's not fine if you're a transgender child. Now,
Yeah,
now
and listen, no 9 or 10-year-old is knocking on a doctor's door saying, give me blockers. And it's not just the parent. This is a group decision. There's a lot of people involved in any child's care. Same thing for trans kids. You know?
Also, you don't just go knock on the door and
Yeah.
say, yeah, I'm feeling like I'm not really in the right body. Can you just give me a couple of doses of estrogen?
Yeah, they don't do that.
That doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen.
And sometimes I listen to this stuff and I'm like, what? where are you getting this information from? Because it's not what we have to go through as parents. Actually, to get what our children need is quite a lot. Sometimes I want to say, can you just believe me or believe my child? But you do have to go through a lot.
They go through a lot, and even as an
Absolutely.
adult trans person, I couldn't just get access to the hormones and surgeries that I needed. There was a therapist involved. There was a provider involved. So it's not as easy as people think. And people like I'm glad you said that. You can't just knock on a doctor's door and expect them to just do what you want them to do. It's not happening with any other community, and it's certainly not happening here.
Yeah.
So the last misconception is transgender children are too young to know that they are transgender. Listen, I say this all the time. If I had a dime for every time I heard that, I would have bought Twitter and I wouldn't have backed out the first time. Okay?
That's good. I remember saying to my son, to Cameron, how do you know that you're transgender? Because I would have liked to have had like a blood test.
Stop right there. I want to ask you. Stacy's not saying anything. Stacy's just shaking her head. Yeah. So I'm going to pick on her right now. So Stacy, what's your gender identity?
She, her.
How do you know that?
That's what I feel in my heart, in my head.
But how do you really know? Like, how can you tell me how you know that you're female? Give me words.
Just, I've always been comfortable the way I am. I've always felt that this is the body I'm supposed to be in.
Yeah.
And that's in my head and my heart.
Thank you. Hard to put into words. Agreed? Is it hard to put into words?
When you ask me that, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so here's the deal. I want you to think about this. Think about this hard. When a transgender child comes out, we expect them to answer that question. And we expect them to give us an answer that makes sense to us. And if an adult can't do it, who's cisgender, how do you expect a transgender child or a non-binary kiddo to tell you how they know their identity? We're setting them up for failure.
Well, I did ask Cameron, and he was just like, I know.
Yeah.
Same.
And then he goes, no. He said, how do you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, I just know. And he goes, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't. His point was, we're feeling the same thing.
Yeah.
He's like, I just know, just like you just know that you're female.
But they're still doubting.
Knew.
But they're still doubting.
Yep.
That's what really breaks my heart. It breaks my heart because I'm one of the people who sit in the suffering with these children, and the only thing they need sometimes is just to be okay, Tony, we're going to support you. We're going to support you, and we're going to make sure that your journey is filled with happiness and love. It's all they need, just like anybody else. They need to be nurtured and loved.
Yep.
All right. Non-binary. Now put your seatbelts on and make sure they're tight. Here we go. Non-binary gender is any gender that isn't exclusively male or female. Non-binary people might feel some mix of both male and female, somewhere in between, or something completely different. Mind blow. I'm binary. I have no clue what it would feel like to be non-binary, but I absolutely believe that non-binary people exist. I say this because a lot of binary people will say, well, what the hell does that mean? What do you mean both, neither, in between? That doesn't make any sense to me, so it doesn't exist. I don't know what it's like to be cisgender. No clue. Don't know what it's like to be born in a body that matches my gender identity, but I absolutely honor cisgender people. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
It is a much better world, and it would be much better for your soul if you just accept people for who they are. Period. You have a choice whether to hang out. In other words, you have a choice whether to be in my bubble or not, okay? But if you don't want to come into my personal bubble, you don't have to hate or hurt me because of it. Just don't hang out with me. Again, you're missing out on a lot, but your choice. Okay. So let's some misconceptions. This is the biggest one, I believe, that they don't exist. All right? Mm-hmm. That's coming from people who are trying to figure it out. Agreed?
Yeah. Yep.
Agreed?
It's maddening.
It's maddening, yeah. Non-binary people are just confused.
Nope.
Non-binary people do not medically transition. Huge misconception. If somebody needs medical intervention to be happy and whole, let's just give it to them. Brilliant idea, isn't it? Mm-hmm. All non-binary people go by they, them pronouns. How many of you know somebody that goes by they, them pronouns? Raise your hand. How many of you struggle with they, them pronouns? Raise your hand. I have to admit, I do, still sometimes, because nobody's perfect. But here's the deal with they, them pronouns. A lot of people say, well, that's not what I was taught at school. It's got to be more than one person. It doesn't make any sense. It's plural. You've been using they, them pronouns for one person your entire life. When we don't know somebody's name, we use they, them. Stacy and I went out for sushi. We're walking out of the restaurant. Somebody drops their wallet. Stacy says to me, oh my God, they just dropped their wallet. One person. All right? Get out of your head about it and use like the power of the pause. We have to honor pronouns. I'm going to be talking about that in a little bit. Like right now. Wow, that was a perfect segue,
quick.
don't you think? Don't you think? All right, pronouns. So let's talk about this. What is a pronoun? I'm going to give it to you simple. A pronoun is a word we use instead of a name.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of Tony, you would say, oh, Tony, he's a great guy. Look at his style. I love his tattoos. He's so cute. He's so funny. You get what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
That's my pronoun.
Gosh,
What
you're so
pronouns do you
Italian.
use?
She, her.
She, her.
You know, and a lot of times the first thing I do when I'm sitting with a new client or I'm sitting with maybe somebody who I'm hanging out with for the first time at a front thing, I always say, I use male pronouns. What pronouns do you use? I just say it because we want to honor people. So that being said, why are pronouns important? Using someone's chosen pronoun is important because it shows respect for their gender, for their identity and their feelings. It helps them feel seen, accepted, and valued. Feeling seen. Now listen, a lot of people don't believe this, but this is the truth. I still get misgendered sometimes. If I'm in the environment two times, this is what typically happens. If I'm in an environment where people used to know me prior to transitioning, and prior to transitioning, I was a club promoter, lesbian club promoter in New Haven, pretty famous. They will misgender me. Some of them do it by accident. Some people do it on purpose. As a trans person, and I know as non-binary people, that we all know when you're doing it on purpose. And when you're doing it like, oh my God, what did I just say, right? But it happens, and it's mean to me. Mm-hmm. It's mean to me, because they know I use he and him. Now, that being said, just because I look the way I look doesn't mean I use he, him pronouns. But I have told people that I've used he, him pronouns. Just like using someone's correct name, using the right pronoun helps create a kind and inclusive environment. Being misgendered causes real damage. For most of us, gender identity is one of the core elements of who we are. You may not realize it unless you've been misgendered. What pronouns do you use?
She, her.
She, her. Now, watch this. You're going to walk into this space, and I'm going to say, hey, Stacy, can you have him sit in that chair over there out of the way of the cameras, please? And you're going to say, I use...
She, her, please.
Okay, you, she, her, great. But can you have him please sit here? Can he sit here? How safe and comfortable do you feel in the space?
You just totally discounted me and my feelings.
Now, could you imagine that happening all the time to you? All the time, no matter what space you're in. And when you're telling people, this is who I am, and you're just being ignored. No, have him sit over there. You're not going to feel safe and comfortable. And when we're talking about trans children, especially those that are too young to access the medical care that they need, the only thing they have control over is call me Tony and call me he. And if we give them that, what we're doing is we're making them feel like their transition is moving forward, even at a snail's pace. We save them. I am telling you, I see it. Yep. I want the two of you, if you don't mind, now I'm going to be playing host here. I want you to think about the first time you've affirmed your child's pronoun and name and how that energy felt coming back.
Amazing. It was powerful. It was powerful.
Do you remember?
Yeah, and it's absolutely powerful. And I remember when we would be out to restaurants, and I would always be like, it would be nerve-wracking to see, oh my gosh, how are they going to address my child? And because they should stop, but a lot of waiters and waitresses still do ma'am and sir, and so, and then the he and she, and the first few times it was like I could see how much it cut Cameron when it would be the wrong gender, the wrong pronoun, the wrong use of ma'am, sir, or whatever. Yeah. But then when that changed, it was like huge to him.
Yeah.
And he'd come home and he'd be like, oh my gosh, I was not misgendered at all once today.
Yep,
But
that's
just the
wonderful.
other day, he texted me and he was like, I was just misgendered twice at work. And I'm like, how?
Yeah.
How can people misgender you? But still 2 years into his journey, it's still very upsetting, as I'm
Yeah.
sure it would be upsetting
It's
to
upset.
you.
It is upsetting for me, and you know. But on the flip side, sometimes like if I'm hanging out with some peeps and people come up, hey guys, what can I get you, sir? It still makes me feel really good.
Yeah.
And it's been since, I mean, I transitioned in 2005, so
Yeah.
it's been a hot minute. It's gonna be 20 years.
But it just
next
goes
year.
show what a huge deal it is.
What an impact.
Huge deal. Yeah. And
When I
impact.
first started the support groups, I run support groups in New Haven since 2008. There was a trans girl, and her mom was really struggling. Her aunt would take her to group. I finally got the mom to come in. She stood up, screamed, and walked out of the parent group the first time, and but she came back, and we were all standing outside, and we were doing it downtown New Haven at that time, so you had to put money in the meters and stuff. And for the first time, the mother used her child's chosen name and pronoun, and she said, "Hey Jody, would you please put more money in the meter?" Sorry, every time I tell this story, I get emotional. And this child was like, took her breath away. If you could see the shift in that child for being acknowledged by her mother, the person that she loves the most in this world, I'll never forget that moment. So it does matter.
Wow,
It
wow.
does
It does.
matter.
And a
Don't-
good
yeah.
tip, and a good tip too is one of my dear friends has a non-binary child and they go by they, he. And so if I'm out with them, as we often are in social circles or around town, and I see a friend, I'll introduce my friend's child to them. I was like, oh, he's going to the high school next year, or they will be at the high school next year with, and so I kind of make it a point to say
great.
Say
that.
the pronoun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and to bring it up, especially at a restaurant. I remember going
Yeah.
out the first few times, just as soon as right after my daughter came out as transgender, and when we're going to order, and I'm like, okay, Emma, what would she like? What would you like?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
trying to,
No, that's
bring that up.
perfect.
Yeah,
We say-
it's a good idea.
When I'm training health providers, I say the same thing. Transference of care is like, this is Tony. He's a great patient. He's super cool, and just to set that tone around pronouns is so important. But great tip. All right. So, what are we actually saying when we ignore someone's gender pronoun? Yes. Sorry. I know you better than you know yourself. When you make the decision, and why am I saying when you make the decision? Because when you know somebody's pronoun, you're making the decision not to use it, right? So when you make the decision to not respect a student's or someone's pronoun, you're ultimately saying that their personal truth is something you are more knowledgeable about than they are, and you're not. Okay, it's not about you, all right? Somebody's pronoun it's not about you, it's about them. And I'm really into I'm a certified life coach. I train about energies and stuff like that, and I can tell you that there's a big difference between need and want, okay? When you feel like you need to do something, that puts a lot of stress on you. Oh my God, I've known this person for 5 years. Now I need to call them by a different pronoun. What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? Put that aside. Say, oh my God, I wanna support and honor my friend. Want makes things a lot easier.
Haven't you had friend that's gotten married or friend that's got divorced
Oh,
and
right,
they
and
changed
change
their
their
name,
name,
and it
right.
takes you a day to get
Right.
used
Well,
to
that's
it.
what it's funny because that's what some of the, like when I'm training schools and stuff, when healthcare advocates are training schools, I get that a lot. Like I always ask the kids, like, what do you want me to tell them? And they're like, well, here's the deal. When a teacher comes back from getting married, we have to call them by a different
Yeah.
name. Nobody doesn't do it. So anyway, here we go. I'd rather hurt you repeatedly than change the way I speak to you. Each time you misgender a student, this is definitely from a school training. But anytime you misgender anyone, okay, you're inflicting harm, whether you intend to or not. Okay, you might not want to do it, but you are doing it. Would you rather hurt someone or just change the way you're speaking to them? I choose number two. I choose number two, for sure. Your sense of safety is not important to me. This is huge because the climate in this country is shifting. Hate is getting louder. I can tell you again, I've been training since 2006, and not once has anybody yelled at me or right to my face said they didn't like me once they found out I was trans, and it's happening to me now when I'm in front of people. So the safety of this is serious. This is serious. When you misgender someone, you run the risk of threatening their personal sense of safety as well as their physical safety. When someone feels invalidated or disrespected, they may not feel safe or comfortable in the space. Have him sit there. You're not going to feel safe or comfortable in the space. when chosen name and pronoun use mistakes happen, and they will. They will. I do it sometimes, you know, and the person corrects you, thank the person for correcting you, move on. Do not apologize. All right, I'm going to give you an example. We're going to do a little role play. Sarah used to be Jack, now Sarah. I'm going to say good morning, Jack, and you're going to say my name is Sarah. That's all you have to say. Remember, we're on script here. We're time sensitive. Okay.
Yes.
Good morning, Jack.
My name is Sarah.
Thank you for correcting me, Sarah. Smile and move on. That's it. Not, oh my God, that's right, I should have known. Oh my God, what am I doing? You told me that before. Oh, listen, that happens to me a lot. When you react in a way of apologizing and carrying on, you're putting the trans or non-binary person or the other person in the situation to make you feel better about what you just did, and they're going to say something like, it's okay.
Right.
And it's not okay. But when you say, thank you for correcting me, Sarah, and you smile, now anybody that's watching that's, you know, the head of an organization or a school, smiling and kindness is free doesn't come into anybody's budget, okay? Cool, right? But what does Sarah feel now? She feels seen, heard, and empowered.
Right.
Huge difference. Thank you for correcting me, Sarah. Smile and move on, okay? Yeah. When you catch yourself using the wrong pronoun or name and the person doesn't correct you, because sometimes there's a lot of shame around it and they're not in the emotional space to do that, just say, excuse me, correct yourself, and move on. I will give you an example, okay? You don't have to say a word, all right? Good morning, Jack. Excuse me, Sarah. That's it. Move on. Easy, easy, and breezy. Thank you. That's my slideshow.
Thank you. So that was a lot of information, and I feel like we've just kind of hit the surface.
Hit the surface.
Hit the surface. But I think it's so important, particularly in this day and age and in the political climate that we're in right now, that if you have any interest in educating yourself at all, that you just start here, for example. And I've always said that since my child came out 2 years ago, I've learned a tremendous amount and realized quite quickly how much I didn't know and all that I needed to learn. And at my age as a parent, I sort of realized that I had a lot of education ahead of me. This today, even listening to you speak, I still had like so many, questions that I wanted to ask, and I'm still learning. There's still so much too that I wanted to share about my child's journey, just because a lot of what Tony said, and Tony's experiences throughout his life were the same as my 15-year-old son's, and probably the same as your child as well.
Absolutely.
When I remember talking to Tony and saying, well, Cameron feels this and Cameron feels that, and he'd be like, yep, that's all normal. And I didn't understand it, and I will never understand it, right? We'll never understand it as parents. Just like you said, you'll never understand what it's like to be cisgender.
No.
But I think that before you jump to any conclusion about anything, before you jump on some bandwagon, realize the intent behind some of these things, and just take a second or two, pause, as Tony likes to say, and just really think about things and understand. Probably a couple of the best things I've ever heard, and I just heard this the other day. I was watching TikTok, because I watch TikTok.
No, I'm not judging.
Okay. A transgender child said on this, and my child has said this to me numerous of times, nobody chooses to be transgender.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yep.
This is not a choice. It is a difficult life that these kids have ahead of them. And so they need, as your parent, your job is to be supportive and help in any way that we can. But this is not a choice, Tony. If I may ask, would you, you've done a lot with your life, but would you have chosen this life for yourself?
No. I mean, listen, my memoir's coming out in a few months, so I can't give too much away about my journey, but I will tell you that it wasn't, my life began once I transitioned. And I always tell people this, prior to transition, I would sit on my couch every night wondering if I wanted to live the next day. And after transition, I can't wait until tomorrow. That is what every human, never mind trans, non-binary, every human deserves to feel, that that love for life. And it wasn't there when I wasn't able to be my authentic self.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
All that being said, too, to educate yourself, there's so many good websites out there. There's so much amazing material to read between Alex, Healthcare Advocates International. Both of those websites are amazing websites with lots of great information, lots of great contact people. Educate yourself as much as you can and be an ally.
Be an ally. And it's all out there to look.
ally.
Right on Alex, you'll see a ton of resources. I think we're going to link that to this video. You'll see all the resources right there on Alex that we have. Healthcare Advocates International is amazing, and if you have any need or desire to learn anything or need help with anything, this is a space to go to. This is a place to go to. So it's all out there. You just need to look, and it's having a desire of wanting to learn,
Exactly.
wanting to love, wanting to be an ally, wanting
Yeah.
to understand.
And could you be a super duper ally and just instead of an ally? We love our allies, but our super duper allies
Yeah,
are
they're-
amazing.
yeah.
So the difference is that you're advocating for a group of people when they're not in the space. If Tony's not in the room, you're still saying, what are you talking about? That's not true about transgender people. You're not just sticking up for the communities when they're standing beside you. So, super duper is the way to go.
Well, it's funny, and I know, gosh, we always do this. We just talk and talk and talk. But I do remember meeting with someone, and they were like, "Oh yeah, I have no problem with transgender people. I just think that the whole bathroom thing is an issue, and I think that the sports thing is an issue, and I don't think that you should be giving gender affirming care to youth. And I think that, I'm like, you have a ton of problems with transgender people,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
it's so much more and so much more complicated, and yet you're talking about people's lives. You're talking about my child's life, your child's life, your life.
Yeah.
You're talking about people's lives, and you have no right, in my opinion, to tell me how I should raise my child or my child how to live their life or Tony how to live his life. We're not bothering
100%.
Yeah.
you. You're not bothering us. I mean,
No.
sometimes you do, but that's just
Yeah,
separate.
but that's just me.
Yeah.
I was like that when I was a lesbian.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no worries.
I mean, as long as you're a good person,
That's how. Listen, that's how I bring people into my circle. It's if you're not in the situation of being a parent of a trans child or a trans adult or whatever, then step aside and you have no space here. If you're going to judge us,
Right.
because you don't know what it's like. When I can tell you that I have seen parents shift, unfortunately, sometimes when it's too late. My God, they're standing in front of a grave saying, "I should have supported you." It's real. That happens. Kids end their life. Or they're sitting in a psych unit with their kid that just try to end their life saying, "Okay, now I think we need to get on board. We need to help this kid." It's too late. Like that shit, don't wait until you get to that point. Okay? Just believe them and love them. This is when unconditional love as a parent is challenged.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Just love your kid. Love your kid unconditionally.
There's a quote that says, I'd rather my kid change their name 50 times than read their obituary in the paper.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because all these surveys, like Trevor Project is amazing. That's on treasureproject.org. Go visit it. It has really good statistics. It has statistics on mental health.
Yeah.
What they never tell us is about the kids that have succeeded in suicide. They only tell attempts and stuff like that. And there have been kids in Connecticut that have ended their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So let's stop and think about what this is really causing.
And the big thing about Trevor Project that they've said, and this is huge, is that something like 40%, I could be wrong
just
about the
one
number.
supportive adult.
Yep,
Yeah.
just needs one supportive adult. That's it.
Yeah, and
That's
that will
it.
cut their
And
chance
it
of
cuts.
attempting suicide by 40%.
Yeah.
And I can tell you this, that I've been that one person for thousands of children in my career, and I'm telling you, it's true. It takes one person to say, "I got your back, I believe in you." And you can change their lives.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Tony, for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Stacy, for being here as always. Keep an eye out on alexinc.org for events that are coming up throughout the rest of the year. Keep an eye out on everything that GCTV does, because there's lots of good stuff to watch right here on GCTV on YouTube. And keep an eye out for Tony Ferriolo, because there's some good stuff coming up soon.
Yeah, see you soon.
Bye-bye. Thank you.